Hi, my name's Ztarli and in this video I'll be doing an autumn commission for Xanti. As with most of my videos, this video is a time lapse and does contain fast moving and flashing images. So for this commission we are going with the chibi style again, which I have drawn twice before for Xanti. I've drawn a spring one, and the first commission I did for her was just one in the middle of a small river. For this one we just wanted her to be relaxing, feeling the breeze of an autumn day. And I did decide to make it the same size as the spring picture to sort of keep them in the set. I made some new brushes during this video, so you will see me using some new custom brushes. I've started to use a lot more texture brushes in a lot of my artwork, and I have found I have improved greatly in creating my backgrounds, and I was really proud of how this background came out. Now to begin with, what you're seeing here is just creating the idea so I can show Xanti and make sure that we're on the same page before I go ahead and start detailing it and putting in a bunch of time and effort. So this was just the idea which I sent off and they were happy with, and I continued on with the actual drawing itself. Once I'd finished with the sketch idea and positioning of everything, I started with the rock and deciding how to do the rock. I used my regular texture brush, my wood texture brush, but I decided I wanted something different and that I didn't want to keep using the same brush all the time. So I did decide, after spending a bit of time sort of blurring and going back and forth with this texture brush, that I would create a brand new brush. So you'll see in a moment, I actually create the brush in the middle of doing this artwork, and I create about 4 different brushes, though one of them turns out to be garbage. So I make a ground texture brush using a cement texture that I just taken a photograph of the cement. And then I made this rock texture. Again, I just took a picture of the ground, and I made this leaf texture too. But the leaf texture is just, it's too easy to see what it is, and it just looked gross. So I've actually not used it for anything, but I super love this rock texture I've created. It's sort of a more grainier rock, I guess a more crumbly looking rock, and it's really fun to use. This obviously is the first time I've used it, but I've used it a bunch since this artwork, including in the Legends of Drakon comic, in which I've used it to colour all the new rock formations as we have moved location, so I can freely experiment with new foliage and new rocks. So it was great to have this new brush on hand. I do use this large pebble sort of looking brush to give myself a bit of extra texture or a bit of a guide of how to do the rocks a bit better. So I just kind of lay this down and then I paint over top of all those rocks to highlight the forms that they've created for me. It looks a bit crummy at the moment and a bit cheap at the moment, but I rework it quite a bit and I'm very happy with how it looks by the end of it. Now this is a 6-hour painting, and I did spend roughly around the same time for the previous 2 chibi pictures. The ratio on this one's a little bit different. I did actually spend a bit more time on the background than I normally do, but I think it really paid off, and I feel like I'm starting to learn where to put shadows and to really push my shadows a bit more. It's a problem some artists have, and certainly I have a lot, is that sometimes I find it hard to make dark shadows. I worry that it's getting too close to black and that it might look weird, but really I need to push my shadows more, and if I force myself to do so, I do end up with a better picture in the end. You'll notice this when I do the shadows for the tree a lot later on. I've coloured the ground and I was finished with it, but then I decided to duplicate the layer and make it a bit darker, and it ended up looking pretty good. I finished with my rocks and the water for now, and I decide to move on to the ground behind the character, and this is where I decide to try out my new dead leaves texture, but as you can see it just looks really bad, so I just lay down some color and then I basically just blur it all away so it's non-existent anymore, and I'm just creating some hills in the background here. I do actually end up with quite a pleasing texture on this landscape, but yeah, I don't end up using that new texture brush at all. It's kind of not very good. This custom brush, however, is my snow brush, which is actually it's from the tutorial, the star brush tutorial. So it's just the stars, but I've deformed the shape of them. And originally I just made it really quickly for a 1 hour speed paint drawing I did where there was snow falling, but I've discovered it's also really great for these quick leaves laying on the ground, and even better for leaves flying through the air because they're already pre-blurred. So I do use them a lot on this picture. I think when I draw the actual leaves flying around the character, I do hand draw them though instead of using any kind of texture brush. Now originally for the leaves I do use this confetti brush. It isn't at its standard setting. I've actually reduced the spacing between them quite considerably so that I could make this sort of puffy tree leaf looking thing. I wasn't terribly happy with them though, and I did end up making a bunch of leaf brushes for another project, so I do actually use the leaf brush over top of these, and I'm much happier once I've done that. So they kind of end up being a combination between my new leaf brush and the confetti brush. The confetti brush is a pretty handy tool for quite a few things, and I do still think it makes an effective looking background for like far off trees, but the edge of it's a little too scattered. So if you are going to use this brush for that, I would recommend going back in with an eraser and just erasing away some of those extra little dots that are coming off the top of the trees. Some of you may notice that I've actually never used a leaf-shaped brush before for creating trees or bushes. I don't know why, but in my mind I always thought it was cheating, but it's totally not. You totally should use all the tools you have available to you to create your pictures. It would take me probably a week to draw all these leaves individually, so it still looks very effective. And in fact, if I did draw them individually, it probably wouldn't end up looking as good. To begin with, I was very unhappy with how the trees were looking and the placement of the leaves. I thought it did look very robotic, but I persisted with it and I kept adding more and more leaves, and I did have a couple of different leaf brushes, so with different amounts of leaves, and I used the smudge tool to sort of smudge them in a bit and added different variations in color. And actually at the end I super like it. I was super happy with how these trees came out with my new leaf brush, and I made a bunch more after I did this picture, and I use them all the time now. But yeah, don't be afraid to try new things, or try things that maybe you written off before because you thought they were cheap or didn't look good. You may find a better way to use them, or learn that maybe you were wrong and that it's okay to use some of the tools you were reluctant to use in the past. For the tree trunks, I do just use my custom wood texture brush because it's a wood texture and it's always been really great for tree trunks. And it's really easy to get effective looking trees. You just have a really dark color and then you just add a sort of a lighter color to one side and reflected light to the other side, and then finally one more highlight layer, and then you have really easy, effective bark covered trees. Colouring the character actually didn't take as long as it normally does. I have done it quite a few times now, so I'm quite used to the colour combinations and how everything goes and how to draw the character. I still enjoy doing it. I actually really love this combination of colours, and I love mixing in the background colours to make the tint slightly different and make it feel more at home in the environment. I did actually erase that tooth partway through colouring this, and I completely forgot about it until after I'd actually sent it to Xanti, and then they pointed out it was missing its tooth at the front. So you actually won't see me drawing this, it's added in after the fact. After saying I was quite used to this character, I do struggle with these legs for quite a bit. I kind of do all the scales on top and then decide it's not looking good, and I paint back over them and try again. So I guess even if you are comfortable with a character, sometimes you can just struggle with something. And it's okay to erase and start again. If that's going to get the job done and it's going to look better, then that's what you got to do. I started mixing in the surrounding colours fairly early in this piece to make it more integrated, and you can see I'm adding some of the orange and the blue from the water onto the chest of the dragon. I actually super love how the chest of this dragon came out. I really like that sort of under the lighter color that shines underneath from a reflective surface like water, I think it turned out really good, and I was really happy with that part of the dragon. Strangely enough, I did remember to add the shadow for the tooth, but completely forgot to add the actual tooth itself. I always find dark claws to be super fun to do. I love doing them black and then having all the reflected lights shining around them, as I do imagine them to be quite shiny, or, quite reflective surfaces. So you can see I've pretty much mixed in every color in the surrounding area I possibly could on the claws, and then ended with a very bright highlight on where the highest curve of the claw would be. And I pretty much do this for all my claws. It's super fun to do. I'm getting close to the end now. I'm starting to add the finishing touches, like reflecting light from the water on the underside of the rocks and the ripples in the water itself, as well as adjusting the amount of leaves I have and little splashes or foam as the river hits the side of the rocks. I now also have to do this wind that's swiping through, and as you can see here, I did go through quite a few iterations of different options before I settled on this kind of thing. After quite a lot of adjusting to it, I just sort of made a light overlay layer and then added a few more swishes with a separate brush. Now you can see that I'm hand drawing these leaves in. I did originally use the blurred snow brush, but I decided that they looked too generic and that I wanted them to be individual leaves. Now for the last finishing touches, I've copied in the picture again and blurred it, and now I'm just erasing away the second layer where I don't want the blur to be, so that there's focus on the picture. And that's it. This is finished except for the missing tooth, which I will add after the fact, and you'll see when I share the picture at the end of the video. And here it is. I really like how this came out. I like how bright and colourful it is and how much it feels like autumn, and I hope Xanti likes it too. Thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I also have a Patreon if you want to support me. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!